Hi, today we're going to talk about the Graphics Studio and how to use it to import a Fair Isle chart from a book or a magazine into Design It for Fair Isle knitting. We think we've got a slightly faster way of doing it than what the manual shows you, so this is something worth trying. First, scan your chart and make sure that the chart is as straight as possible. We use Adobe Photoshop to straighten it out so that the vertical and horizontal lines are as straight as they possibly can be. Then you want to use the Graphics Studio to open the image, and you'll see in a minute that there are some grid settings. So you want to set that to the number of stitches and rows that your grid has. Then you want to make sure that the sample size, which is where it's going to get the colors from, is in the middle area. Position the grid on top of your chart. Use the eyedropper to populate the yarn palette. Then check it out. If it looks good, then you're going to keep it. If it doesn't, then we're going to make some adjustments. So that's basically the way we do it. And if you give us a minute, we'll set that up in Design and Knit. Hi, we're back in the Design and Knit Graphics Studio, and we've already captured a image of a Fair Isle pattern from Bacardi. So first step is we're going to open the file. Okay, and if you notice over here on this side, you're going to follow these steps one at a time until we get to perfection. So the first step is to set up the grid, and we've already counted. Our design has 12 stitches wide by 29 rows. Okay, so what this is going to do is create a grid that we're going to overlay on top of the grid lines that are on the image. Okay, now you want to choose a grid color that contrasts with your grid. So you notice ours is kind of a dark charcoal. The red contrasts well, so we're going to use red. And the sample area size, as we mentioned, put it in the middle here. Okay, and what that means is the sample is going to be a little square in the middle. If you make it very large, like this, then it's going to try to scan into the grid lines, and that's when you get inaccurate color. If you make it too small, then it may not pick up the colors properly, particularly if you have a poor scan. This design actually was done on a computer, so the color is very even. But on a scan from a magazine, for example, the color may not be even across the entire square. So that's where we start here at medium. And if that doesn't work, we try to go small. But if you go too small, then you might get too many colors. So we like to use grid corners move independently. If you have a design that is very square, as this one is, then you might not want to use that. If you have a design that was scanned a little bit crooked, the grid corners move independently will help you re-square it up if you weren't able to do that in Photoshop, or if you have some other distortion that Photoshop couldn't adjust for. So we're going to click OK, and then you want to grab these little corners and put them at the corner of your design. So let's see, we're going to put the fourth corner here. We probably want to move this a little bit inside because of that white area that's on the grid. So we're going to move this one a little bit up also. Okay, now if you want to check to see how well it's overlaying, you click this button here, View Grid. And you see that my red lines are exactly on top of my charcoal lines. That's exactly what we want to see. If it was a little bit off like this, you can see that the red grid is not aligned to the charcoal lines, and then you're going to have a problem because Design and Knit, for example, will try to sample this little square in here, and that would include some of the charcoal. Similarly here, it's not over the real color, so we're going to get some charcoal as well as this periwinkle blue. So we'll move that back. Ideally, you want the red right on top of those charcoal grid lines. Okay, so we've positioned our grid on top of the chart. Now we want to deal with our yarn palette. Now, normally you're going to get a palette like this, and then how do you remove the extra colors, and you're trying to put the colors into these other spaces, and it's a huge pain in the butt. So that's where in the Stitch Designer you can actually make your own palette. But what I do is I create this one that's called Blank. Blank actually has to have a stitch and a color, so that's why we left the white in there. We put the knit and purl stitches. So we'll show you in another video how to make Blank. But for now, just trust us. You want to have a blank palette, and that makes it much easier. So how are we going to pick up these colors from here and put it into our blank palette? That's where you want to use this big eyedropper. Big eyedropper takes the color from here and puts it into your palette. Little eyedropper takes it from the palette and puts it onto your image. And little eyedropper can be very helpful if you've got an old magazine photo and the colors aren't even. Therefore, you can try to remap the colors into something even. But in this particular case, we've got kind of the perfect situation. So we're going to use big eyedropper and pick up the colors. So I'm going to pick this guy up and put it here. Pick this one up and so forth until all 6 colors are picked up. Whoops. Okay, and then this is the 6th one. Okay, then you can save your palette, and we'll call this one Bacardi 2. So this is the palette that will come up when you want to knit your design. Okay, so the next step is to preview. So you want to hit this guy here. So the next step in our conversion is to just click the preview. We like to do this to see kind of what's going to happen. And here we end up with these broken red lines. Don't worry about that. But it's looking pretty good. If you have a old magazine photo, it's not going to look this good, and you may have some squares that are miscolored, etc. And that's where you can go back and try to adjust it. But in this case, we don't think we're going to need any adjustments. The center area here should give us the proper color. But if you need adjustments, you can go in here and modify, the bird's eye. So using a maximum colors per row, we'll say, hey, this one is similar to this one and not really similar to that one. So make this one equal to that one, this one equal to that one, and so forth. Now, I think these color boundaries and the bird's eye probably refer to, say, a photograph that you want to turn into a Fair Isle design. But really, for Fair Isle charted design, we don't really use those things. So if it's looking good, you hit OK. If it's not looking good, you go back and you readjust these settings here at the grid setting, or these conversion settings here. And you're going to keep doing that and previewing until you have it right. Then you're going to click OK. I usually hit no here. And now it's going to open the Stitch Designer. And there we have it, the perfect pattern. You might want to go through and check this to make sure that it didn't misplace any colors. Here's our little Bacardi palette ready and waiting for us to use. It's really near perfection. So we hope you try this. It's a lot more challenging with an old magazine photo, so you might want to just practice with a more perfect grid that was done on a computer, and then you can move into the less perfect magazine photos or old books once you've kind of figured out all the different settings. Hope you enjoy it.